Okay, so this is the third video I've done. The first one, we looked at the church circle just to give people some content at these present times. If their churches are diving online and doing lots of online meetings, it can just give you some content to use. So we looked at the church circle, and then we looked at the church circle and I set the commands and the specific biblical content in there for you. And then this is 3/3 discipleship, just really to help us think about how we might be able to specifically use that content in the context of meeting together online. And we found 3/3 discipleship again to be really helpful. You'll see us learning these things from movements around the world, and this is producing fruit just everywhere in the world. Just a simple, biblical, reproducible pattern of meeting together with disciples. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at three things. We're just going to, when we meet together, we're always going to look back, we're going to look up, and we're going to spend some time just looking forward together. And let me just take you through what that might look like. Number one, when we meet together with disciples, we're going to spend a bit of time just exercising care, just taking care of everybody. Just asking how people are and how people have been doing since we last met. And then the second thing we're going to do is worship. And even in a home gathering with just your family or an online gathering, just find simple ways of worshipping together. Even if that's just really just what are we thankful for. So any thanksgiving or what are we thankful for that's happened over the last week. And if you want to share a song together, find a way of singing together, you can do that. Celebrate the Lord's Supper. We're even suggesting people can do that online if they want to, find a way of doing that. And maybe especially at this time, just think about giving together. Is the Lord leading us to give? I'm not talking about stopping giving to the local churches that you're already a part of, but just asking yourselves the question, maybe there are people in need around us in our community. Could we begin to respond to anybody in our Christian community or anybody in our local community who are just in need at the moment? The third thing we're going to do is we're going to exercise what we call loving accountability. Okay? Just a simple way of talking and sharing together just about how we follow Jesus in the last week. And we're going to be setting goals as we look forward. So what we'll do is we'll ask each other just how we got on with the goals that we set from last week. So loving accountability. The fourth thing is vision. Just casting again a vision for why we're gathering, for who we are as a church. And at the moment we're suggesting maybe just use the church circle that I set out for you on that first video. Just keep setting a vision for a biblically healthy, reproducing church for yourselves at the moment. And then in the look up section, we're going to take time just to look up to God and to look up at His Word, really looking to the Spirit and the Word to work in us as disciples. And so what we're going to do is we're going to often look at a new command. And this is perhaps specifically how you can use some of that content I set in the church circle. So we're going to look at a new command. And for example, the first command that I showed you was repent and believe. Okay. So you might look at that command, the command to repent and believe. And we always look at that and study that from a story in Luke 19 verse 1 to 10. It's the story of Zacchaeus meeting Jesus that day. A wonderful story. And what we're going to do is we're going to tell the story verbally. Just tell it together. If you're the leader, just tell it from memory. You don't want to change it too much. You don't want to modernize it. You're just going to tell the story as best you can from memory. And then together as a group, we always spend some time just saying, can we retell that story together as a group, just from what the leader has shared. Again, you're just encouraging people to really engage with the story initially. And then we're going to read it together. Typically when we do this, we're maybe going to read it 2 or 3 times. We're going to point people back to the text, back to the word. Was the story that I just shared, is it there? Is it in the word? Did I get it right? Did we get it right? And just look into the word. And then when people have read it a couple of times, what we always do is we get people to retell it in 2s around the room. And this is just a great way of getting people to engage with the story. So just a fair bit of time there, if you like, in the text. And then we always ask a few questions. This is supposed to be a sword. So there are just some questions we ask. What does the story tell you about God or about Jesus? What does the story tell you about people? Is there a command in that story? You could say example to follow as well. Command to obey or example to follow. And then, is there a promise for us? So just 4 questions. And we're encouraging people not to pull in lots of other content from around the Bible, but really just pull out the content that you've read and that you've told in the passage and just ask very specifically, what does this passage teach us about God or Jesus? What do we learn about the people in the story? Is there a command, an example to follow? And is there a promise there for us? And then from this looking up section, we're always then just going to look forward. And what we're going to do is we're going to set goals. This is just a fantastic thing to do as a community. Set goals together. Just how are we going to go from here and follow Jesus over this week? How are we going to live lives that look like obedience to him? And we just use this. We say to people, there's a cost. It's going to cost us to follow Jesus this week. So for us, the cost is connect with God. C, connect with God. The O is obey Jesus. Perhaps something you've learned from the story. Is there something God's asking you to obey this week? Who can you share with? When we talk about share, we're going to very specifically be talking about who can you share the gospel with this week. And we use something called the 3 circles, and at this point we're going to do a practice of the 3 circles so that everyone's familiar with just how to go, how to share the gospel with people. And then, is there somebody you could teach or train? Could you teach this story to somebody? Could you teach this study method to somebody? Could you teach the church circle to somebody, or teach the gospel to somebody? And then finally, we're going to pray out. Okay, we're going to pray and commission everybody to go to live obedient lives for Jesus this week. Lives that look like us going and sharing the gospel and reproducing disciples everywhere. That's what we want to see happen, and we're praying that God multiplies this everywhere. So this we call 3/3 discipleship, and I'm linking that specifically at this time back to the other 2 videos just to help you see the content from the church circle, the biblical content in that second video, and then how you can use that content each time you meet. And this might give you up to even 3 months of content that you can roll out over the next while. Hope you find that helpful. God bless.